Today, we're diving into one of the toughest challenges in cybersecurity. What do you actually do when your cloud environment gets breached? We've gone through the insights from some of the top experts at Microsoft and beyond to bring you their playbook. So let's get right into it. First things first, we have to get one thing straight. As expert Ahmed Nabil puts it, no system is ever completely immune to attack. It's not a matter of if a breach will happen, it's really a matter of when. The attacks are just getting more and more complex, the landscape is always shifting, and a really determined attacker, well, they're probably going to find a way in eventually.
Okay, so if we just accepted a breach is pretty much inevitable, what's the real game changer? When the alarms are going off and everything is on the line, what separates an organization that bounces back quickly from one that completely falls apart?
The answer is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It all comes down to your incident response. A rock-solid IR plan is the firewall between a manageable problem and a full-blown catastrophe. And here's the kicker. In the cloud, those old playbooks you're used to, they just won't cut it anymore.
And that brings us to our first big idea. This shift to the cloud isn't just about changing your technology stack. It's a fundamental change in the entire rules of the game. The principles and assumptions that work just fine for on-premise security can actually become your biggest liabilities in the cloud. And as cybersecurity author Tyler Wrightson reminds us, at the heart of this new game is a timeless rule. We're not fighting software glitches or system errors. We are fighting a human adversary. And understanding them is absolutely crucial. So, to play this new game well, you have to start with your mindset. Honestly, this is where so many organizations get completely stuck. They try to apply these old mental models to a brand new environment. And that is just a recipe for failure. Microsoft's Oren Thomas has a great analogy for this. He compares our attachment to old security models to how the outdated OSI model is still used to teach networking. We fall back on what feels familiar, building bigger firewalls, controlling IP ranges, but cloud security is really all about identity and APIs. The whole concept of a perimeter is gone. It's like trying to navigate a city using a map of the ocean. It just doesn't work. And this really illustrates the core problem perfectly. That inertia, that tendency we all have to just stick with what's comfortable, is a massive vulnerability. The key here is that we don't just need new tools. We need a completely updated conceptual toolkit. So once we've updated our mindset, what's the strategy? Well, it's a two-pronged approach that actually echoes some very ancient wisdom. You have to deeply understand your adversary, and you have to deeply understand your own defenses. First, let's look at understanding the enemy. Tyler Wrightson breaks this down into 3 key areas. First up, their skill level. Are you dealing with a script kiddie or a sophisticated state-sponsored group? Second, their TTPs. That stands for tactics, techniques, and procedures. And finally, their motives. What are they actually trying to achieve? Answering these questions helps you start to anticipate their next move. Now for the second part, knowing yourself. Expert Yilmaz Digermenci introduces this really cool military concept called visibility analysis. See, a commander analyzes the terrain to cover any blind spots. In cybersecurity, this means mapping out your entire digital terrain to find the blind spots in your own defenses so you can deploy your sensors where they'll actually be the most effective. And of course, this strategy isn't new at all. It's straight from Sun Tzu. This ancient wisdom is more relevant than ever in today's digital battlefields. Know your attacker and know your own vulnerabilities. All right, now for a really fascinating and often overlooked part of this whole battle, the fight isn't just against the attackers outside. It's also an internal struggle against our own human nature and, well, corporate inertia. Just think about it for a second. During a major security incident, everyone is laser-focused. There's this incredible sense of urgency. Budgets that were impossible to get suddenly get approved. Teams collaborate seamlessly, and big problems get solved fast. But what happens the moment the immediate threat is gone? This chart from cybersecurity architect George Balafoudis shows it perfectly. The sense of urgency, or SOU, it spikes during an incident. But right after, it just drops off a cliff. And that crucial window of opportunity you had to fix the deep, underlying problems that caused the breach in the first place, it slams shut. So what are those problems? Well, they're usually the long-pending items on every security leader's to-do list. Finally retiring that ancient server that can't be patched, fully testing the disaster recovery plan, or disabling insecure protocols. These are the chronic issues that just hang around because of that corporate inertia.
The real challenge for leaders is to harness that peak urgency and use it to finally fix these lingering risks.
Okay, so we've covered the right mindset and the right strategy. Now let's get practical. What does an effective incident response playbook for the cloud actually look like?
Everything, and I mean everything, starts here with the shared responsibility model. You absolutely must understand what you are responsible for securing versus what the cloud provider handles. In an IaaS model, you manage a whole lot. In a SaaS model, you manage far less. Assuming the provider is handling something that is actually your responsibility is a catastrophic but very common mistake.
Your plan should follow the standard NIST lifecycle. Preparation is everything you do before an incident: drills, configuring tools, documentation. Detection and analysis is figuring out the what, where, and how of the attack. Containment and recovery is about stopping the bleeding and getting services back online. And the postmortem is where you learn. But crucially, as expert Brian Spidergall points out, this plan has to be a living document. It needs to be constantly tested and updated, especially as your cloud environment changes.
And that really brings us to the final crucial takeaway. This game is constantly evolving. Attackers are clever, they're relentless, and they are always probing for weaknesses. The most dangerous vulnerability you have probably isn't in your code or your configuration. It's in an outdated mindset. So the real question you have to ask yourself is your thinking keeping pace?